E-Textile Game Controllers is a collection of research creation activities that include a series of free public workshops leading to a concept-led game jam. It was developed and delivered through a partnership between two research labs at OCAD University, Social Body Lab and Gameplay Lab, and Dames Making Games, a community organization that offers production space, education, advocacy, archiving, and resource sharing for queer and gender marginalized people interested in games. This research explores the intersection of two making practices, alternative game controllers and electronic textiles. Just as alternative game controllers focus on the creation of DIY and bespoke game controllers, e-textile sensors take an analogous approach to sensor making, resulting in interfaces that are pliable, flexible, and customizable.
In the push towards a more diverse and equitable technology sector, do-it-yourself game making is an area of growing significance. As one example, there is ongoing interest in building alternative game controllers within DIY art and maker communities, as evidenced by the ongoing success of the Alt Control GDC showcase at the Game Developers Conference each year, and via projects such as those shown here. The maker movement has been instrumental in the rise of DIY hardware and software practices since the 90s, and discussions around digital craft practices in maker groups and game communities have enabled a feminist corrective to critical design work. According to Legistera, alternative game controllers provide opportunities to explore interactions which move away from prescribed and hegemonic design values or expectations. Community groups have been at the forefront of offering game jams to explore unconventional input devices, and there was significant interest in the possibilities to enhance tactility, person-to-person interaction, and physical engagement for game makers. This cross-disciplinary work offers an important site of democratized social and technological innovation via a focus on making as opposed to consuming. This is particularly evident with e-textile and wearable technology projects, and it is at this intersection that the contributions of this research sit. Specific to the use of workshops as research sites, Orngreen and Levingston identify workshops as a means, workshops as practice, and workshops as a research methodology in their discussion of the ways these spaces can facilitate collaborative and participatory research. Our textile game controller workshops focused on skill building, ideation, and iteratively the development of future workshops in order to provide a forum for exploration and experimentation of the affordances of e-textiles, including their embodied social and political potentials. The emphasis on this research is on the embodied ways of knowing across a range of communities invested in equity work. We took a sketching and hardware approach, where hands-on critical making results from combining critical thinking with physical making, with an emphasis on expression and experimentation rather than technical sophistication. As sites of research, workshops have a rich collaborative dynamic. Researchers acted as facilitators who prioritised participant experience, whilst participants and their practice were central to the research process. The research objectives of the workshops were multiple: to identify affordances that an e-textile, including wearable electronics approach, can bring to making alternative game controllers, to develop materials and resource kits for knowledge mobilisation to be used in follow-up game jam, and to provide domain expertise to a wide range of participants within an equity-seeking group. Multiple partners imply the need to speak to multiple publics, from individual community members to art organisations to the academy itself. The multi-sectoral nature of the collaboration drove the adoption of mixed methods from a range of domains, from the commonplace, questionnaires and observation, to a more novel centering on play as a research method to underpin workshop development and knowledge mobilisation goals. In Hjorth et al.'s approach, play is a mechanism for transmission that involves the public in social spaces as a way to extend the reach of research to a wider than typical audience. Our partnership and emphasis on playful presentation of material is similar in ambition. Material play is central to the physical experience of making, and a haptic and multisensory feedback core to both learning and developing e-textile and wearable technology projects. Participants play with materials, technology and concepts to create their work. As a unifying metaphor, play holds the potential to disturb the inevitable power dynamics whilst inviting active engagement. As a mode of inquiry, the research team were explicitly playful in the development of learning materials, setting of workshop space, and in dialogue with participants.
A total of 5 workshops were offered. all focused on the creation of alternative game controllers using e-textile sensors. Details of the development process can be found in our paper. Workshop 1, Intro to Textile Game Controllers, provided an overview of material and prototyping methods to gauge interest in topics for future workshops. 3 e-textile sensing methods were introduced: capacitive sensing, digital switches, and analog sensors, all made with conductive textiles. Each sensing method was used in combination with a microcontroller to control a screen-based game. Workshop 2, Multi-Centric Game Controllers, offered a deeper dive into creating game controllers using an analog sensor constructed from conductive fabric and resistive plastic sheeting, a method introduced and popularized by the collaborative team Colpitts-Campbell. Participants were encouraged to create a pressure-sensitive textile balance designed for particular parts of the body.
Workshop 3, Wearable Game Controllers, returned to the concept of digital textile switches, but focused on a more complex implementation of them. It introduced the idea of social switches, switches that were activated by physical contact between conductive fabric patches on the bodies of 2 different players. This allowed for a focus on multiplayer and/or collaborative games. Workshop 4, Stitch and Stuff, focused on the creation of game controllers using capacitive sensors embroidered with conductive thread. This workshop differed from others in that participants made a hardware-only game. Gameplay feedback was given via lights and sounds produced by the microcontroller rather than a screen-based game. Workshop 5, Fun with Felting, once again utilized the capacitive sensing technique but implemented through the use of felted steel fiber. The sample designs for these textile game controllers were made to look like traditional game controllers, which helped to clearly communicate the affordances of the textile sensors for the game community in the initial stages of learning.
Multiple adjustments were made throughout the 5 workshops. Content was simplified, with more supporting materials for later workshops. Physical layout of the space shifted from a front-of-the-room lecture style to a sewing circle style to facilitate dialogue, sharing, and peer learning. 2 techniques were added to our initial set of methods: a photo booth for participants to self-document, and live presentation materials in the form of shared, editable slide decks were introduced to rapidly respond to participant needs whilst the sessions were in progress. Although originally scheduled as a weekend-long in-person event, the resulting game jam was pivoted to a remote format in response to COVID-19 closures. Nevertheless, learnings from the 5 workshops were applied to the format and preparation for the materials in the online game jam. Digital materials were developed based on the questions, experiences, and observations generated from the 5 workshops, including diagrams, video tutorials, and code examples. This allowed Game Jam participants to review demonstrations asynchronously as needed, better supporting self-directed learning. A physical materials kit was developed and delivered to all Game Jam participants to allow them to participate from their homes. The kit contained all materials and tools required for the sensing and crafting techniques that were introduced in the 5 workshops. The Game Jam was carried out by video conference across 2 Saturday meetings, and a final community show and tell. Additional asynchronous support was offered between meetings on Slack.
Our research workshops deployed Hjorth et al.'s heuristics for mobilizing research knowledge across multiple communities. By developing methods that shifted ideas across the groups involved, from researchers to participants and back again, in a way that was responsive to our embodied contexts of making, we developed techniques that facilitated translation of concepts that were then transmitted to multiple publics. Findings were carried forward from the 5 workshops to scaffold the culminatory game jam. We learned that careful preparation of both physical and digital material was essential to support the creativity of the participant projects, and we were later able to extend the reach of our research by sharing these resources via public channels. Due to the game jam taking place in domestic environments, the resulting game controllers tended to be a bit smaller and handheld, whereas under the originally intended circumstances, we had hoped for more full-bodied interactions. However, as evidenced by their responses via making, the Dames Making Games community members were able to demonstrate ways in which the e-textile techniques were translated effectively in the creation of alternative game controllers, with prototypes that used digital, analog, and capacitive sensing techniques implemented through the use of conductive and resistive textile materials, and crafting methods including stitching, gluing, and felting. As such, it can be surmised that the intersection of these two making practices, alternative game controllers and electronic textile sensors, holds rich potential for further creative and critical inquiry.